The cough started the same week he arrived at the old mill, though Gareth Grayson told himself it was only dust from the stones he had been scrubbing clean for 3 days straight. He wiped his mouth on the back of his hand and studied the massive wooden wheel that hung motionless over the creek. Several of its paddles rotted clear through, others missing entirely. The whole structure groaned when the wind pushed it, threatening to collapse if he so much as looked at it wrong. But the bones were good. The stones inside were true. The gears, once he cleared out 20 years of rust and bird nests, would turn again. He had rebuilt worse. The sun was lowering when he heard the splash of hooves in the ford 50 yards downstream. He glanced that way and saw the orc woman leading a mule across, her green shoulders broad under a canvas apron, her movements efficient and unhurried. She did not look toward the mill. She never did during the day. But every evening since he had arrived, she appeared on his doorstep with a clay cup of tea and a word or two, before disappearing back to the little stall she kept at the ford where the trade road crossed the creek. Gareth climbed down from the wheel and went inside to wash. The mill house was a single room with a loft, the furniture left behind by the last miller all broken or missing. He had a bedroll, his tools, a tin plate, and a contract promising him ownership once he got the mill running again. The landowner had been clear. No coin up front. Prove it works, then it is yours. He was drying his hands when he heard her footsteps on the path. She knocked twice, then pushed the door open without waiting. She always did that. Knocked, then entered, as if the knock were a courtesy rather than a request. "Tea," she said, and held out the cup. Gareth took it. The clay was warm against his palms. He nodded his thanks. She lingered in the doorway, her dark eyes studying his face. Her tusks were small, barely curving past her upper lip, and her features were softer than he had expected when he first saw her. Wide nose, strong jaw, but a gentleness in the set of her mouth that surprised him every time. "You are coughing more," she said. "It is the dust." "Perhaps." She turned to go. "Wait," Gareth said. The word came out rougher than he intended. He cleared his throat. "What is your name?" She paused, one hand on the door frame. "Tala." "Tala what?" "Tala Stonefoot. Gareth Grayson." "I know." She tilted her head slightly. "The contract holder told the village." "Right." She looked at him a moment longer, then left. He watched her walk back down the path, her stride long and sure, her braids swinging between her shoulders. Then he drank the tea. It was bitter and earthy, but it warmed him all the way down, and the tightness in his chest eased just a little. He told himself it was only tea. Over the next 2 weeks, he dismantled the wheel piece by piece, marking each plank so he would know where it belonged when he rebuilt it. The good wood he stacked under tarps, the rotten wood he burned. The iron bands he cleaned and oiled. He worked from first light until his hands shook too much to hold a hammer, and every evening Tala brought him tea. She never stayed long. Sometimes she said nothing at all, just handed him the cup and left. Other times she mentioned the weather or asked if he needed anything from her stall. He always said no. He had his own supplies bought in the last town before he came here. But he noticed she watched him drink before she turned away, and once, when he coughed hard enough to spill a few drops, she took a step toward him before stopping herself. "You should rest more," she said. "I am fine." "You are not." He looked at her, startled by the sharpness in her tone. She met his gaze without flinching. "I have heard that cough before," she said quietly. "Rest more." Then she left, and he stood there holding the empty cup, something uneasy stirring in his chest that had nothing to do with the cough. That night he dreamed of drowning, of water filling his lungs, and he woke gasping and sweating in the dark. He lit a candle and sat on the edge of his bedroll until the shaking stopped. Then he went to the window and looked out at the creek. The moon was bright enough to see the ford, and the little stall Tala kept there, its shutters closed for the night. He wondered where she lived, if she had family, if she had always been here, or if she had come from somewhere else like him. He wondered why she brought him tea the next evening. When she knocked and entered, he was ready with a question. "Why do you do this?" She paused, the cup halfway extended. "Do what? Bring me tea? Every night?" Her expression did not change, but something shifted in her eyes. She finished handing him the cup. "You are alone here," she said. "It seems right. I can make my own tea, I know." "Then why?" She was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "Because I want to." It was not an answer, not really, but her voice was so steady, so certain, that Gareth found he could not push further. He took the tea and drank, and she watched him with that same quiet intensity until he finished. "Thank you," he said, her mouth curved just slightly. Not quite a smile, but close. "You are welcome, Gareth Grayson." She used his full name the way she had that first night, and he realized she had never shortened it, never called him just Gareth. He wanted to ask why, but she was already leaving and he let her go. By the end of the third week, he had a new wheel half built, the oak planks fitted and pegged, the iron bands heated and hammered into place. His hands were blistered and his shoulders ached, but the work was good. Clean. The kind of thing that made sense when nothing else did. The cough was worse. He could not hide it anymore, could not pretend it was only dust. It came at night, deep and rattling, and sometimes he tasted blood. He started sleeping propped against the wall because lying flat made it harder to breathe. Tala noticed. Of course she noticed. "You need a healer," she said one evening, her voice tight. "I am fine." "You are not fine, you are sick. It will pass." "It will not pass." She took a step closer and he saw something raw in her face, something almost like fear. "Please, let me bring someone." "No, why not?" "Because I cannot pay them." The words came out harsher than he meant, and he saw her flinch. He looked away. "I am sorry, but I have no coin until the mill is running, and I cannot stop working to be sick." She was silent. When he looked back, her jaw was set, her hands clenched at her sides. "Then drink the tea," she said. "Every drop. Do you understand?" "I always do." "Every drop, Gareth Grayson." There was something desperate in the way she said it, and he nodded slowly. She held his gaze a moment longer, then turned and left without another word. That night the tea tasted different, more bitter, almost astringent. But it warmed him, and the cough eased, and he slept better than he had in days. He did not question it. He trusted her, though he could not have said why. The wheel was finished by the first week of autumn. Gareth hauled it into place with a block and tackle, the ropes creaking under the weight, and spent 2 days fitting it to the axle and securing the whole assembly. When he finally released the brake and let the creak push against the paddles, the wheel turned. Slowly at first, then faster, the gears inside grinding and protesting but turning. He stood there watching it, his chest tight with something that was not the cough, and when Tala arrived that evening he met her at the door with a grin. "It works," he said. Her face lit up. It was the first time he had seen her truly smile, her tusks flashing, her eyes bright. "You did it." "Not done yet. The stones need dressing. The hopper needs fixing, but it works." She laughed, a sound so warm and unguarded that it startled him. Then impulsively she reached out and gripped his arm. "I am glad," she said. Her hand was strong and warm, her fingers calloused. He looked down at where she touched him, then up at her face, and something passed between them that he did not have words for. She let go quickly, her smile fading into something more uncertain. "Your tea," she said, and held out the cup. He took it. Their fingers brushed. He drank and she watched, and neither of them spoke. When she left, he stood in the doorway and watched her all the way back to the ford. The next day he walked down to her stall for the first time. It was a simple structure, 3 walls and a roof, open to the road. She sold tea, hard biscuits, strips of dried meat, and a few basic provisions for travelers. The prices were painted on a board nailed to one of the posts. Fair prices. Honest. Tala looked up when he approached, surprise flickering across her face. Gareth Grayson, she said. Do you need something? Tea, he said. For the day, if you have any to sell, I do. She poured him a cup from a pot on the fire. He paid her, their hands brushing again, and he sipped it slowly while she served two other travelers, a man and a woman on horseback who barely glanced at her as they tossed their coins on the counter. When they were gone, Gareth said, How long have you run this stall? 4 years. Alone. Yes. Where do you live? She pointed upstream toward a line of trees. There is a cabin, small, it was my mother's. She passed 3 years ago, I am sorry. Tala shrugged, but he saw the tightness around her eyes. She lived long, that is more than some have. He wanted to ask more, but a wagon rumbled up to the ford and she turned to greet the driver. Gareth finished his tea and left the cup on the counter. She glanced at him as he walked away, and he thought he saw the start of a smile. That evening she brought his tea as always, but this time she stayed a few minutes longer, leaning against the doorframe while he drank. The wheel sounds good, she said. You can hear it from the ford, when the wind is right. He nodded. They were quiet for a moment, the kind of quiet that felt easy rather than awkward. Why did you come here? She asked suddenly. For the mill. But why here, why this mill? He considered the question. No one had asked him that before. I needed work, he said slowly. And I wanted something that was mine. The contract gives me that if I finish. You will finish. You sound certain. I am. He looked at her, curious. Why? Because you do not give up. I can see it. There was something in the way she said it, a weight of recognition, as if she understood what that cost. He wanted to ask if she was the same, if she held on when others would have let go, but the words stuck in his throat. Instead, he said, Thank you. For the tea, for all of it. Her expression softened. You are welcome. She left, and he stood there holding the empty cup, feeling the warmth of it against his palms, and wondered what he was doing. Wondered if he was imagining the way she looked at him. Wondered if it mattered. The cough was better. He could not deny it anymore. Whatever she was putting in the tea, it was working. He slept through the night now, woke without the tightness in his chest, worked longer without needing to stop and catch his breath. He should have been grateful. Instead, he was uneasy. One evening, when she handed him the cup, he held it without drinking. What is in this? He asked. She stiffened. Tea. What else? Her eyes searched his face. Why do you ask? Because I am better, and I do not think it is only rest. She looked away. Her jaw worked, as if she were chewing on words she did not want to say. Drink it, she said finally. Please. Tala, please, Gareth. There was something so raw in her voice that he could not refuse. He drank. The bitterness was there, stronger than usual, and he tasted something astringent beneath the earthiness of the tea. Medicine. He was sure of it now. When he finished, he set the cup down and looked at her. Tell me, he said quietly. She shook her head. Not yet. Why not? Because I am afraid. The admission hung in the air between them. He wanted to reach for her, to tell her she had nothing to fear from him, but she was already turning away, her shoulders tight, her hands clenched. Tala, wait. She stopped, but she did not turn back. Whatever it is, he said, I am grateful. You know that, right? She nodded once sharply, and then she was gone. He stood there a long time, staring at the empty cup, trying to understand what he had just heard in her voice. The next evening she did not come. He waited until full dark, then walked down to the ford. Her stall was shuttered, the fire pit cold. He looked toward the trees where she had said her cabin stood, but he could not see anything in the darkness. He thought about calling out, then thought better of it. If she wanted to be alone, he would respect that, but the worry gnawed at him all night. She came the next evening, her face drawn, her eyes shadowed. She handed him the tea without a word. "Are you all right?" he asked. "Yes. You did not come last night. I know, I am sorry." "You do not need to apologize. I just wanted to know you were safe." She looked at him then, something unreadable in her expression. "Why?" she asked. "Why what? Why do you care?" The question caught him off guard. He opened his mouth, then closed it, searching for the right words. "Because you matter," he said finally. "To me. You matter to me." Her breath hitched. For a moment he thought she might cry, but she blinked hard and looked away. "Drink the tea," she whispered. He drank. She watched. And when he handed the cup back, their fingers lingered together longer than necessary. "Tala," he said. "Not yet," she said again. "Soon, I promise. Just not yet." Then she left, and he let her go, though it felt like tearing something inside himself. The millstones were true and sharp, the gears greased, the hopper mended. Gareth spent a week testing everything, running grain through in small batches, adjusting the flow, checking the grind. The flour came out fine and even, pale and clean. He bagged it and took it to the village 2 miles south, where the baker bought it on the spot and asked when he could bring more. "Next week," Gareth said. The baker grinned and shook his hand. "Good to have the mill running again. Old Marvin would be pleased." Marvin, the last miller, died 20 years back. His son tried to keep it going but had no skill for it, gave up after a year. Gareth nodded. He had heard some of this from the landowner, but it felt different hearing it from someone who remembered. "Well," the baker said, "you have the skill. That is plain." Gareth walked back to the mill feeling something he had not felt in a long time. Pride. Accomplishment. The sense that he was building something that would last. Tala was waiting when he arrived. She stood by the wheel, watching the water churn against the paddles, and she turned when she heard his footsteps. "The baker bought everything," he said. Her face broke into a smile. "I knew he would." "You did? Your flour is good. I tried some." "When?" "You left a bag by the door 3 days ago. I took a pinch." He laughed, surprised. "You could have asked." "I did not want to bother you." "You never bother me, Tala." The words came out softer than he intended, and he saw her smile falter, something vulnerable flickering in her eyes. "Come inside," he said. "Let me make you tea for once." She hesitated, then nodded. They went into the mill house. He had cleaned it up over the past weeks, mended the broken chair, built a small table, hung a shelf for his few belongings. It was still sparse, but it felt like a home now. His home. He put water on to boil and gestured for her to sit. She did, her movements careful, as if she were afraid of taking up too much space. "I do not have anything but plain tea," he said. "No medicine in it." She flinched. He saw it, the way her shoulders hunched, the way her gaze dropped to the table. "Tala." "I know," she said quietly. "I know you want answers. Only if you are ready to give them." She was silent while he poured the tea and set a cup in front of her. He sat across from her and waited. Finally she spoke. "The cough you had," she said. "I have heard it before, seen it before. My mother had it." He went very still. "It starts small," Tala continued. "Dust and dryness, then it deepens. Gets into the lungs. If you do not stop it early, it kills you, slowly, over months or years." "What is it?" "Stone lung. It comes from breathing in dust, from mills, from quarries, from mines. My mother worked in a quarry before she came here. By the time she stopped, it was too late." Gareth felt something cold settle in his chest. "And you think I have it?" "I thought you might." The cough sounded the same, so I put radroot in your tea. It is bitter, but it clears the lungs, slows the sickness. My mother used it. It gave her 3 more years, 3 years. "Yes," he stared at her. "How much does radroot cost?" She looked away. "Tala, how much?" "It does not matter." "It does to me." She shook her head. "I chose to do it. You did not ask. But you spent your coin, on me." "Why?" Her hands were clenched on the table, her knuckles pale green. When she spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. "Because I could not watch you die." The words hit him like a fist to the chest. He could not breathe for a moment, could not think. "You barely know me," he said. "I know enough." How? She looked up then, and her eyes were wet, her face raw. "Because you are kind," she said. "Because you work hard and do not complain. Because you say thank you every time I bring you tea, and you never look at me like I am something to be afraid of. Because when I watch you, I see someone who builds things instead of breaking them. And I thought," her voice broke, "I thought if I could keep you alive, maybe you would stay. Maybe you would keep coming back every evening, and that would be enough." Gareth's throat tightened. He reached across the table and took her hand. "Tala, I am sorry," she said, tears spilling over now. "I should have told you, I should have asked. But I was afraid you would say no, and I could not." "Stop," he said gently. "Stop." She fell silent, her breath hitching. "How much have you spent?" he asked. "It does not matter." "Tell me." She closed her eyes. 40 silver, maybe more. I stopped counting. 40 silver. It was a fortune for someone running a tea stall. Months of income. Maybe a year. "Tala," he said, his voice rough. "Why would you do that?" She opened her eyes and looked at him, and the answer was there in her face, in the way her hand trembled in his. "Because I love you," she whispered. The world narrowed to the two of them, to the warmth of her hand and the ache in her voice and the truth written across her face. "You love me," he repeated, testing the words. "Yes." "Since when?" "Since the first week. Maybe the first day, I do not know. I just know that I could not stop thinking about you, could not stop wanting to see you, and when I heard the cough, I knew I would do anything to keep you alive." Gareth's chest felt too tight. He stood, still holding her hand, and pulled her to her feet. She came willingly, her eyes wide. "I do not know what to say," he said. "You do not have to say anything." "Yes, I do." He took a breath. "I am not good with words, Tala, I never have been, but I need you to know that these past weeks, the best part of every day has been when you knock on that door. And I have been trying not to hope for more, because I did not think," he stopped, shook his head. "I did not think someone like you would want someone like me." "Someone like me," she echoed, strong, good, beautiful. She made a small, choked sound. "I am an orc. I know. People hate us. Fear us. I do not. You should. It would be easier. I do not care about easier." He stepped closer, close enough to see the flecks of gold in her dark eyes, the way her tusks pressed against her lower lip. "I care about you." She was crying again, but she was smiling too, and when he cupped her face in his hands, she leaned into the touch like she had been starving for it. "Gareth," she whispered. He kissed her. Softly at first, careful of her tusks, then deeper when she gasped and pulled him closer. She tasted like tea and salt and something sweet he could not name, and when they finally broke apart they were both shaking. "Stay," he said. "Tonight, stay with me." "I should not." "Why not?" "Because if I stay, I will not want to leave." "Then do not leave." She laughed, the sound wet and breathless. "You do not know what you are asking." "I know exactly what I am asking." She searched his face, and whatever she saw there made her smile. "All right," she said. "All right." They sat together on his bedroll, her head on his shoulder, his arm around her waist, and talked until the candle burned low. She told him about her mother, about the years of watching her fade, about the cabin in the woods that felt too empty now. He told her about the mills he had worked, the places he had been, the loneliness that followed him everywhere until he came here. "I am glad you came," she said. "So am I." She fell asleep against him, her breathing deep and even, and he held her and watched the shadows on the wall and felt something settle in his chest that he had not known was missing. When she woke before dawn, she kissed him once, softly, and slipped out into the gray light. He watched her go, then lay back and stared at the ceiling, a smile tugging at his mouth. The next evening she brought tea as always, but this time when he invited her and she stayed. They ate together, A simple meal of bread and cheese, and talked about small things, easy things. When she left, he walked her to the door and kissed her goodnight, and she laughed against his mouth and promised to come back. She did. Every evening. And every evening she stayed a little longer. The mill was running full time now. Farmers brought their grain in wagons, and Gareth ground it into flour, taking a portion as payment and selling the rest. The coin came in steadily, enough to buy better tools, to repair the roof, to start saving. Enough, he thought, to pay Tala back. He brought it up one evening, counting out 40 silver on the table. For the red root, he said. She stared at the coins, then at him. No, she said. Tala, no, Gareth, I did not do it for coin, I know, but you should not have to bear the cost alone. It was my choice. And this is mine. They argued about it, their voices rising, until finally she shoved the coins back across the table. If you want to give me something, she said, her eyes blazing, then give me something that matters, not coin. What do you want? She looked at him for a long moment, then said, I want you to let me stay, not just for an evening, for good. His heart kicked hard against his ribs. You mean that? Yes. Move in here with me, if you will have me, he laughed, the sound rough and incredulous. Tala, I have been trying to figure out how to ask you the same thing for a week. Her expression shifted, surprise giving way to something softer. Then ask me, she said. He stood and took her hands. Tala Stonefoot, he said, will you stay here with me? Will you make this place ours? Yes, she said. Yes. He kissed her, and she kissed him back, and the coins sat forgotten on the table. She moved in 3 days later, bringing her few belongings in a single pack. The cabin in the woods she left empty, though she said she could not bring herself to sell it yet. It was my mother's, she said. It feels wrong. Then keep it, Gareth said. We can use it for storage or guests, or whatever you want. She smiled and kissed him, and that was the end of it. Living together was easier than he expected. She woke early and made breakfast while he checked the mill. They worked side by side during the day, her helping with the customers, him managing the grinding. In the evenings they cooked together, ate together, talked or sat in comfortable silence, and every night she made tea. For both of them now, still bitter, still medicinal. Do I still need it? He asked once. Yes, she said. The red root has to be taken for a year at least, maybe longer, to be safe. Will I ever be cured? I do not know. My mother was not, but she had it for years before she started treatment. You caught it early. There is hope. He nodded and drank, and she watched him with that same quiet intensity, and he thought he could live with this. The bitterness, the uncertainty. As long as she was here, the trouble started in late autumn. A man came to the mill, well-dressed, riding a fine horse. He introduced himself as Aldrich Finch, the new owner of the Ford rights. The old owner sold them to me last month, he said. I am here to discuss terms. Gareth frowned. Terms for what? For use of the Ford. You use it, do you not? To bring in grain, to send out flour. The road crosses at the Ford, yes, but there is no toll. There is now 5 coppers per wagon. 5 coppers. Gareth stared at him. That is robbery. Aldrich smiled. It was not a kind smile. That is business. And if you do not like it, you are free to find another route. The nearest Ford was 10 miles south. It would add a full day to every trip. I will pay it, Gareth said tightly. Good, and there is one more matter, the tea stall at the Ford. It is on my land now. I am charging rent. 10 silver a month. Gareth's blood went cold. 10 silver. It is a prime location, fair price. It is extortion. Aldrich's smile faded. Watch your tongue, Miller. I am offering a fair deal. If the Orc woman cannot afford it, she can move her stall elsewhere. She has been there for 4 years. And now she will pay for the privilege or leave. He turned his horse and rode off before Gareth could respond. Tala was waiting when he came inside. She had heard everything. Her face was pale, her jaw set. "I cannot pay 10 silver a month," she said. "I do not make that much, I know. And if I move the stall, I will lose all my customers. They stop at the ford because it is convenient. Anywhere else they will pass me by. I know." She looked at him, her eyes desperate. "What do we do?" Gareth took her hands. "We will figure it out. I promise." But he did not know how. The first month they scraped together the 10 silver by combining their income and cutting every expense they could. The second month, Gareth sold his spare tools. The third month they ate nothing but bread and porridge and still came up short. Tala closed the stall for a week and took work mucking out stables in the village, coming home exhausted and stinking, her hands raw. Gareth hated it. Hated watching her work herself into the ground. Hated the smug look on Aldrich Finch's face every time he came to collect the rent. "There has to be a way," he said one night. Tala was sitting by the fire, her head in her hands. She looked up at him, her eyes dull with exhaustion. "What way?" she asked. "We have no coin left, nothing to sell. The mill makes enough to keep us fed, but not enough for the rent and the ford toll both. Then we buy the ford rights." She laughed, a bitter sound. "With what coin? Finch paid 200 silver for them. We do not have 200 coppers. We will get it." How? He did not have an answer. That night, lying in bed with Tala curled against him, Gareth stared at the ceiling and thought. The mill was running well. Too well. He could handle more grain, grind more flour, make more coin. But he needed customers, and customers needed a reason to come here instead of the mill 10 miles south. An idea began to form. The next morning he went to the village and spoke to the baker. "How much flour do you buy in a month?" he asked. The baker thought about it. 30, maybe 40 bags, from 3 different mills. "What if I could give you a better price? And deliver it to you so you do not have to travel?" The baker raised an eyebrow. "How much better? 2 coppers less per bag. And you would deliver once a week." The baker grinned. "Then you have a deal." Gareth went to every shop, every tavern, every household that bought flour. He offered lower prices and free delivery, and by the end of the week he had tripled his orders. It meant longer hours. Meant grinding through the night sometimes. Meant hauling bags of flour in the wagon by himself because he could not afford to hire help. But the coin came in. Slowly at first, then faster. Tala saw what he was doing and tried to help, but he refused. "You are already working too hard," he said. "So are you. I can handle it." "Gareth," he kissed her, cutting off her protest. "Let me do this, please." She did, though he could see the worry in her eyes every time he stumbled in at dawn, too tired to eat, barely able to stand. The cough came back. It was small at first, just a tickle in his throat, but within a week it was deeper, rattling in his chest. Tala heard it and went pale. "You are not drinking enough tea," she said. "I am drinking it every night. It is not enough. You are working too hard, breathing too much dust. You need to rest." "I cannot rest, not yet." "Gareth, I am fine." He was not fine, he knew it and she knew it, but he could not stop. Not when they were so close. By midwinter he had saved 80 silver. It was not enough, but it was a start. Aldrich Finch came to collect the rent and Gareth met him at the door. "I want to buy the ford rights," he said. Aldrich laughed. "You cannot afford them. Name your price." 200 silver, same as I paid." "I will give you 100 now and the rest in 6 months. Aldrich's laughter faded. He studied Gareth with cold eyes. "Why would I agree to that?" "Because if you do not, I will build a bridge." It was a bluff. He did not have the coin or the time to build a bridge, but Aldrich did not know that. The man's eyes narrowed. "You are bluffing. Try me." They stared at each other. Finally, Aldrich said, 100 now, 100 in 6 months. "And if you miss the payment, the rights revert to me and you forfeit what you have already paid." "Done." They shook on it, and Gareth felt something loosen in his chest. It was not over, not yet, but it was a start. Tala cried when he told her. Not sad tears, but relieved ones, and she held him so tight he could barely breathe. "You did it," she whispered. "We did it, together." She pulled back and looked at him, and her expression shifted. "You are coughing again," she said. "I know. You need to rest." "I will. Once we pay the second 100. Gareth." "I will be fine, Tala, I promise." But the cough got worse. By the end of winter, he was waking up in the night gasping for air, his chest so tight he thought it might crack. Tala doubled the red root in his tea, but it was not enough. She begged him to see a healer, but he refused. "We need every copper for the payment," he said. "I do not care about the payment. I care about you. And I care about you, about us. I am not going to let Finch take this from us. He will not have to take it if you die." The words hung between them, sharp and brutal. Gareth looked at her and saw the fear in her eyes, the desperation, and he felt something crack inside himself. "I am not going to die," he said quietly. "You do not know that." "Yes, I do, because I have you, and I am not leaving you, Tala. I am not." She closed her eyes, tears streaming down her face, and he pulled her into his arms and held her while she sobbed. Spring came slowly. The creek swelled with meltwater, the wheel turned faster, and the orders kept coming. Gareth ground flour until his hands bled, until he could not stand without swaying, until Tala physically dragged him away from the mill and forced him to sleep. "Enough," she said. "You have done enough." "Not yet." "Yes, yet. I will take over for a few days. You are going to rest." "Tala, do not argue with me, Gareth Grayson. I am not asking." He was too tired to fight. He slept for 2 days straight, waking only to drink the tea she brought him, and when he finally got up, he felt almost human again. The cough was still there, but quieter. Manageable. They worked together through the spring, splitting the load, and by early summer they had the second 100 silver. Gareth took it to Aldrich Finch personally. The man counted it twice, his expression sour. "You actually did it," he said. "I did." Aldrich handed him the deed to the Ford rights. "Congratulations, Miller. You just bought yourself a lot of trouble. I can handle it." Aldrich snorted and rode away. Gareth stood there holding the deed, feeling the weight of it, the reality of it. The Ford was theirs. The stall was safe. They had done it. He walked back to the mill, and Tala met him at the door. "Well," she said. He held up the deed. She screamed, a sound of pure joy, and threw her arms around him. He laughed and spun her around, and they kissed there in the doorway, the wheel turning behind them, the sun warm on their faces. "We did it," she said. "We did." That evening she made tea as always, but this time she poured 2 cups and handed him one. "To us," she said, "to us." They drank together, and the bitterness was still there, but it tasted like victory now. "Like hope, Gareth," she said after a moment. "Yes." "I want to marry you," he stared at her. "What?" "I want to marry you if you will have me." His heart was pounding so hard he thought it might break through his ribs. "Tala Stonefoot," he said, his voice rough. "I have been yours since the first cup of tea. You know that, right?" "I hoped," she said, "but I wanted to be sure." He set down his cup and took her hands. "I will marry you," he said. "Today, tomorrow, whenever you want, just say the word." She smiled, her tusks flashing, her eyes bright with tears. "Tomorrow, then." They were married the next day by the village priest, with the baker and his wife as witnesses. Tala wore a simple green dress, and Gareth wore his cleanest shirt, and when the priest pronounced them husband and wife, they kissed like the world was ending and beginning all at once. The baker's wife cried, the priest smiled, and Gareth thought he had never been happier in his entire life. They walked back to the mill hand in hand, and Tala laughed when he picked her up and carried her over the threshold. "What are you doing?" she said. "It is tradition." "Whose tradition?" "Mine." She kissed him, and he carried her inside, and they spent the rest of the day tangled together in their bed. the wheel turning outside, the world falling away. That evening she made tea as always, but this time she did not bring it to him. She called him to the table, and when he sat down she poured 2 cups and set them side by side. "No more secrets," she said. "From now on we drink together." He smiled and took his cup. Together. They drank, and the bitterness was still there, but it felt different now. Shared. A promise that they would face whatever came next side by side. The months passed. The mill prospered. The cough faded, and the healer Tala finally convinced him to see confirmed that the red root had worked. The stone lung was still there but dormant, and as long as he kept taking the medicine and did not push himself too hard, he would be fine. "You are lucky," the healer said. "Most people do not catch it this early." "I had help," Gareth said, and he looked at Tala and she smiled. They expanded the stall at the ford, adding a second roof and more supplies. Travelers came from farther away now, drawn by Tala's reputation for fair prices and good tea, and she hired a girl from the village to help on busy days. The mill ran smooth and steady, the wheel turning day and night, and Gareth took on an apprentice, a young man from the village who wanted to learn the trade. And every evening, Tala made tea, not just for Gareth anymore, but for both of them. They drank together at the table, talking about the day, about their plans, about the future. One evening in late autumn, almost a year after they were married, Tala set down her cup and looked at him with a strange expression. "What is it?" he asked. "I am with child." The world stopped. He stared at her, his mind blank, and then he was on his feet, pulling her into his arms, laughing and crying at the same time. "Are you sure?" he said. "Yes." "When?" "Spring. Maybe early summer." He kissed her and she kissed him back, and they held each other while the wheel turned and the fire crackled and the tea grew cold. "I am afraid," she whispered. "Of what?" "Of what people will say. About a half-orc child, about us." He pulled back and looked at her. "Let them say what they want. This child will be ours, and we will love it and protect it and raise it to be strong and kind, just like you." Her eyes filled with tears. "You are a good man, Gareth Grayson. And you are a good woman, Tala Grayson." She smiled at the sound of her new name, and he kissed her again, and the fear faded into something softer. Something like hope. The child was born on a warm day in early summer. A girl, small and squirming, with green skin and tiny tusks in her father's gray eyes. They named her Alara, and Gareth held her for the first time and felt his heart break open in a way he had not known was possible. Tala watched them, exhausted but smiling, and said, "She has your nose." "And your strength," Gareth said. "She will need it. She will have it. And she will have us." They raised Alara in the mill house, the wheel turning outside her window, the sound of water a constant lullaby. She grew quickly, toddling around the mill by her first birthday, laughing at the way the flour dust caught in the sunlight. The village accepted her more easily than Gareth had expected. The baker's wife cooed over her. The priest blessed her. And the apprentice, who had become a friend, carved her a set of wooden toys that she treasured. There were still stares, still whispers, but Gareth and Tala faced them together, and in time the whispers faded. Every evening Tala made tea. For herself, for Gareth, and as Alara grew older, a small cup for her as well. Not medicinal, just sweet and warm, a ritual that tied them together. One evening, when Alara was 3, she looked up at her mother and said, "Why do you always make tea, Mama?" Tala smiled and stroked her daughter's hair. "Because a long time ago, tea was how I told your father I loved him, and now it is how I tell you both." Alara did not understand, not yet, but she smiled and drank her tea, and Gareth reached across the table and took Tala's hand. "Thank you," he said. "For what?" "For the tea, for everything, for saving my life." She squeezed his hand. "You saved mine too, you know." "How?" "By coming back. Every evening. by staying. They sat there together, the three of them, while the wheel turned and the fire crackled and the world outside grew dark. And Gareth thought about the day he had arrived at the mill, coughing and alone, and the orc woman who had brought him tea without asking for anything in return. He thought about the secret she had carried, the coin she had spent, the love she had hidden in every bitter cup. And he thought about the life they had built together, the child they had made, the home they had created from nothing but hope and hard work and a willingness to believe in each other. "I love you," he said. "I love you too," Tala said. And Alara, not understanding but feeling the warmth in the words, said, "I love you both." They laughed and pulled her close, and the tea grew cold, but it did not matter. They had everything they needed. Years passed. The mill prospered. Alara grew into a bright, strong girl who loved to help her father grind the grain, and her mother served the travelers at the ford. She learned to read and write, to calculate weights and measures, to bargain with customers, and charm them with her smile. She asked questions about being half-orc, about why she looked different from the other children, and Gareth and Tala answered honestly. They told her about prejudice, about fear, about the way the world could be unkind to those who were different. But they also told her about strength, about love, about the way two people from different worlds could build something beautiful together. "You are not half of anything," Tala said. "You are whole, you are ours, and you are perfect." Alara believed them. And when the other children teased her, she held her head high and walked away, just like her parents had taught her. The cough never came back. Gareth kept taking the red root, a cup of tea every evening, and the stone lungs stayed dormant. The healer said he might live a normal life as long as he was careful, and Gareth intended to be very careful indeed. He had too much to live for now. One evening, when Alara was 7, she came to the table with a question. "Papa, Mama, how did you meet?" Gareth and Tala looked at each other and smiled. "Your mother brought me tea," Gareth said. "Every evening," Tala added, "and one cup had a secret." "What secret?" Alara asked, her eyes wide. Tala reached across the table and took Gareth's hand. "That I loved him," she said, "and that I would do anything to keep him safe." Alara thought about that for a moment, then said, "That is a good secret." "It was," Gareth said. "The best secret I ever learned." They drank their tea together, the three of them, and the wheel turned outside and the stars came out one by one. And in the warmth of the mill house, surrounded by the people he loved most in the world, Gareth Grayson knew that he had found what he had been searching for all his life: a home, a family, a future. And every evening, without fail, Tala made tea. The bitterness was long gone, replaced by honey and herbs, but the ritual remained. A quiet moment at the end of the day, a chance to sit together and remember where they had come from and how far they had traveled. One cup, one promise, one love that had grown from a secret into something strong enough to last a lifetime. And as the years rolled on, and Alara grew into a woman of her own, and the mill continued to turn, Gareth and Tala sat together every evening and drank their tea together. Always together. The wheel turned. The creek flowed. And in the little mill house by the ford, two people who had found each other against all odds lived out their days in quiet happiness, grateful for every moment, every cup, every evening shared. It was not a grand story. Not the kind bards sang about in taverns or nobles told at court, but it was theirs, and that was enough.